Welcome to Suffolk Matters, where all of Suffolk County meets the men and women of Suffolk AME. News, opinions, and insights you won't hear anywhere else. Here's your host, the president of New York's largest independent union, Suffolk AME's Dan Levler.
Welcome to another edition of Suffolk Matters on Walk 97.5 and 94.3 The Shark, where Suffolk County meets the men and women of Suffolk AME. News and views you can't hear anywhere else. So my guest this morning is Kelly Shivers. She's an AME vice president. Kelly, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
And so when I say AME vice president, I mean that she works with us at the union all day long, dealing with all sorts of issues across all sorts of different job titles and everything else. And we're going to get into what that's like. But first and foremost, I want to start with your previous career and what it was you used to do before coming up here to work with us. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So I entered county employment in 2014 as a caseworker for the Office for the Aging. Little funny tidbit on that is when I took the test for caseworker, I wanted to be at CPS. I wanted to work with kids because that's what I had been doing. So when I got this canvas letter for the Office for the Aging, I was like, oh, what is this? I don't know. I thought it was APS. I went into that.
Right.
Into that interview.
APS is Adult
Protective Services.
Yeah.
Yep. So I went into that interview a bit blind, but it went great, and I wound up loving it there. I never thought the senior population was a population I was interested in working with, but man, did they make their way into my heart. It was a wonderful place to work.
Yeah.
I was there for almost 10 years until now up here at AME.
Yeah, and so what type of work? So Office of the Aging, now you say Adult Protective Services is a different thing. So what's the distinction on Office of the Aging? What specific work?
Yeah, so whereas Adult Protective Services is more, emergency-based services, Office for the Aging provides services to keep people in their homes, keep them safe in their homes so that they don't end up in assisted livings or nursing homes. We had a home care program, so we provided home care. We set them up with other services like home delivered meals and things like that, medication delivery, anything to help support them at home.
Sure. And like warn them about like some hearing aid scams that are out in the world.
Oh, absolutely.
And all, tons of different things.
Yeah.
And that older population has a lot of personality and a lot of interesting stories. You talk age, experience, all of that stuff. So I get, kind of falling in love with your clients and saying, because I remember asking you to come up here and do this work. And it was an opportunity to help a lot of people. And I thought you were going to be a great fit. And you turned out to be a really great fit with this team and what we're trying to do for all the workers in Suffolk County. But there was, the only reluctance I think you had was the concern that you had for your clients, the people that you knew, and you wanted to make sure that you got everything wrapped up for everybody and ready to be handed off. And again, to me, it speaks to the altruism of the public worker, right?
Yeah,
so,
no, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. So, but you've been into advocacy more or less your whole life, right?
Yes.
And, when you say I'm looking to get into CPS, thinking maybe it was going to be Adult Protective Services, then ending up in Office of the Aging, but that was all just to help other people. But then you got involved on the union side as well and threw yourself in there. So let's talk a little bit about your union history also.
Yeah, absolutely. So a former colleague and good friend of mine, shout out Jim Seitz, he was the unit president of the H. Lee Dennison unit at the time, and his secretary position became open, and he approached me and asked if I'd be interested in helping out. I always... in the office was always somebody who was always raising their hand if there was something going on or okay, I'll do it, even if I didn't really know what I was jumping into. I just like to be involved. So that's how I came to be on his board as secretary. I did that for a few years. And then Jim retired and the unit president spot opened. And I was hesitant, mostly because I'm always fearful of letting people down. I want to make sure I know my job and do it well. And I had a lot of encouragement from the members in the unit and colleagues of mine. And so I took a leap of faith and they voted me into that. And I really enjoyed that. It was a smaller level, the local level, but it's now created this amazing opportunity. So
Sure. And, they have the expression of, I guess all politics are local. Well, all union work is local also. So now working on this larger scale, it's just doing the local work for a lot more places, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Constantly busy. But, let's just talk a little bit about what that experience has been like now moving in with us and seeing, working behind the scenes, not only just on the business of the union, but politics, the external politics, getting to know folks from other unions, all of that, and then the day-to-day advocacy.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. It's a great team at AME. My colleagues have been wonderful, really bringing me under their wing and showing me the ropes and supporting me. They're not letting me flounder. They're not throwing me out there, to trip over my own feet. They got my back, and it's helping me grow. It's been a few months, so I'm still feeling new. I'm still learning, but it's been a great learning process. I'm hearing from members from all different departments and learning, about their job titles a little bit. And it's incredible how we can be helping with one person with their very specific need in one instant and hang up that phone and completely be pulled in a complete other direction that has nothing to do with that thing we just did. And, you got to think on your feet a lot and be ready at all times. So it's been an incredible experience, and just going to other events and, like you mentioned, other unions, meeting the leaders of like the PBA and all those other unions. These are all really good people who are really working their butts off to help everybody in this, in Suffolk County. And it's been incredible.
So we say AME is a wall-to-wall bargaining unit, and that, in union speak just means we have a lot of different job titles, a lot of different people doing a lot of different jobs. Mm-hmm. And I always explain to people, I came from an engineering background. I worked out at Public Works. If you needed something, made out of concrete and stuck in the ground and had to last for 100 years, I'm your guy. But I don't know the first thing about nursing, right? And management, for their end of things, they look at some global issues, and they have experts in every department. That's their commissioners, their department heads, whatever else. Our experts are the people that do the job day to day. They're the ones that are in there actually working with the materials. And that's the heart of what we do is we spend the time to speak to individuals about what specifically they do. Not that we know it intimately in advance. We've got to find out from folks, okay, what are your needs? Right. And then we walk back to management. Okay, you guys are looking at a spreadsheet that says, you have X amount of things and X amount of people to do it. And I'm telling you from the people who do the actual work that there's other stuff that needs to be addressed, and we kind of work that stuff through. But I want to speak to one point, as we talk about the diversity inside of AME and all the different departments and, working on a particular person's need and then working on someone else's need from a different walk of life, from a different department, and then even talking about our brothers and sisters in other labor unions. By and large, we have so much more in common than we don't. We always like to, I don't even say we like to do this, but I think there is an attempt in the world to try and highlight us by our differences. But by and large, that person standing online next to you at the grocery store has more in common with you than some of the other people that they want us to idolize. Right. And we say, this is what you should be in life. You should be this celebrity. You should be this uber rich person. You should strive to get this yacht. Some of that stuff is stolen from everyday people that you're standing next to online at the grocery store, and they want you to hate them so you don't pay attention to what they're, what the yacht people are stealing from you. That's just my, my hot take on all of that. But
I think for me, it's just having a compassion for people, understanding everybody, is dealing with their own thing. They're all going through whatever they're going through. At the end of the day, we're all just trying to get through the day, put food on the tables for our kids or our families, and that's it. We're doing the best we can. I leave a lot of space for people. I don't believe in good or bad. I think people are complicated and just need compassion.
Sure.
That's where I've always led from.
Yeah, and listen, having someone like us in a workplace, right, to have a union that can represent you, that means that there's someone you can go to that's going to fight on your behalf, and that's all they do all day long is fight for people, and on their behalf at work. And we've seen some examples in the news recently when someone feels like there's no one to advocate for them, what they may do on their own. And I think management understands across, not just government, private sector, all over the place. New York being a union, a union-strong town, right? I think that employers recognize the value in unions, in having folks be able to go somewhere and have their issues vetted and then brought back to management and say, okay, we have a real problem here, and this is how we need to, and we kind of fight and argue about how to get it done, but we make improvements.
Right, and at the end of the day, it creates a stronger workforce. Yeah. If people feel supported in their jobs or feel like they have someone to turn to, they're gonna work harder if they feel like they're being supported and someone's there to lend them a hand. So I think it's a win-win-win.
Sure. Well, then on top of everything else, you've got some committee assignments and various work groups you've got to work with. So why don't we talk a little bit about additional responsibilities?
The surprise responsibilities.
Yes.
So I was put on the Welfare to Work Commission. So there's only been one of those meetings since I've been up here. But that was an interesting experience over at the legislature in Hauppauge. It's a group of people who are from all different, not-for-profit or, and us coming from AME, and everybody just really getting in a room and figuring out right now their main focus is affordable housing. The salaries are low. People are struggling to afford their rent or struggling to afford their mortgages, and there's got to be better options out there for them. There has to be more affordable options out there. So just watching all these people in a room from all different walks of life and just coming together with one mission it was a cool experience.
And, it's in the title, Welfare to Work, right? And so you want to get off of assistance and onto being self-sustainable. And, I was thinking about this a little bit, as you were getting involved in the committee, just the basic concept of it. And while you would immediately think of, public and not necessarily public jobs, but private jobs, public jobs, same concept, right? So we talk about public workers. These are people that everybody out in the public pays a tiny little bit into the pot to get these workers out there to solve societal problems, right? Roads need to be cleared after a storm. There needs to be somebody that's going to, God forbid, there's some sort of an emergency event. You've got to be able to call someone. You've got to be able to dispatch somebody to deal with whatever that issue may be.
Providing crucial services for everybody.
Listen, our crossing guards get hit by cars, so kids don't, right? And that's not every day, by and large, but government workers work for the public, right? And they're not answerable directly to the public in the same way because management also works for the public, right? Their salaries are derived from the same source our salaries are derived from, and this whole system is designed to achieve things for society. But even inside of public work, there is hardships, right? There's a difficulty in getting, folks to take the job because the jobs don't pay enough.
That's right.
Folks to prioritize a job because, if you take a job that isn't paying you enough, you're immediately signing on to have second and third jobs that you have to prioritize. And this is something we've been working with the administration on, and they're listening and they're working with us to solve this problem. But, welfare to work is not just, what you would traditionally think. That it also is encompassed inside of government work.
Right. I mean, we have members working over at Department of Social Services who are processing applications for public benefits and then also on public benefits themselves.
They qualify for it, right? And, to have an administration that understands that that's an issue, that's looking...
And addressing the issue.
Looking at so we've heard this catchphrase out in the public before, we're going to right-size government, and that's usually a management term for we're going to fire a bunch of people and try and get everyone to do more work, with less workers.
Right.
And this county executive and his team said, you don't get more with less, you get less with less. Absolutely. And so we need to figure out the right amount of people that are needed in the job to provide the services the public's paying for, right? Yeah. So if you're paying for the service and not getting the service, it's like going to the grocery store, ringing up a bunch of stuff and walking out with an empty bag. You can't, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. So these are big problems, and these are things that, a group like Welfare to Work, they're looking at, not just, private sector work. They're looking at government work as well. Yeah, and it's just an interesting distinction, I think. So, but, listen, out in Suffolk County, we're working with the administration to do a salary study. We want to look at what it's like for government workers in other jurisdictions comparable to our own to make sure that Suffolk County is being competitive.
Right.
And so, and obviously you and I have had some discussions on this, but why do you think that's so important for, for a government?
Right. It's so important when you're talking about the crucial types of services that Suffolk County employees provide, if they're not being compensated for the important work they're doing, people, they lose motive, morale's down. People don't stay. Maybe they'll come for a little bit, but it's not worth it. They leave. It's crucial that we, like I said before, have a strong workforce out there. And I do think the county executive, to your point, is listening and is serious on fixing that issue between the salary study and, that announcement last month. I think that's a really great first step and a jumping off point.
Yeah. And listen, you want to recruit and retain people that want to be here, right?
Absolutely.
And talking about your altruism and your desire to come in, you are a great example of what our workforce looks like. These are people that, in their spare time, are little league coaches, are volunteer firemen, are doing all of these other things in the community. Right. They sought out a job that allowed them to do the most good for the most amount of people. And if they can't do work like that, then they seek it somewhere else. You still have to provide for your family.
That's it, right? Yeah, at the end of the day.
And so, these problems didn't, come up overnight. This has been going on for 20, 30 years, in different ways, and now it has come to be a national crisis. You're finding municipalities, localities in general, states, even the federal government struggling to find employees. And if we look at, some of what's going to be promised next year in terms of what's going to go on with federal workers, if all these federal workers are going to find themselves out of a job, where do they go? Where are they going to go? Are they going to go into government? Are they going to go into the private sector? What does employment look like at that point? What do employment numbers look like at this point? So it's important to be ahead of these crises before they come down. Yeah. And that's why it's good to work with people that are forward-looking, listen, and understand the problem and look to implement positive change.
Address the problem now before it becomes a larger problem, really.
So listen, given all of what we're talking about, I know some of these concepts are maybe a little heavy and a little broad, and I just wanted to make sure we touched on some of that. But I think, you have more that you can add, to your life history and your work history that has informed the work not only that you did for Suffolk County, but the work that you're doing with AME. So why don't we talk a little bit and go a little bit more in depth into your education, the path that you set for yourself, and then the work that you did, the experiences you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started out, I graduated high school. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I went to Suffolk County Community College for 2.5 years because I wasn't sure. I was taking all different classes. I wound up applying to this little known fact, Dowling, and got a partial scholarship for their aviation program because I got it in my head. I wanted to fly planes, and that sounded wonderful. And someone told me once that when you enter a life of public service or social work, that it's more a calling. It isn't really something you seek out, but it calls you. And I believe that's true. I literally woke up one day and said, what am I doing? Right. I don't want to fly planes. How is that filling my bucket? What is that doing for me? And I applied to Adelphi University to their social work program. So I'm a licensed social worker. And during my time doing that, I really got interested in more volunteering experiences. I volunteered as a big sister for Big Brothers Big Sisters for several years. I had a little brother, Gabriel. He was the sweetest thing. I spent a lot of time with him, his family. It was a real nice experience. I'm the youngest of 4, so I never got that big sister experience in real life. So it was pretty cool. I also volunteered. There came an opportunity through my job at the time to be a rape crisis counselor. So I volunteered to do that, and I'd basically be on call. You'd get called to the hospital or to the the CAC in Central Islip to be there if it were a child, just as a support. Someone just to be there as a kind, face, someone to hold their hand through what they were going through. So yeah, this work really did find me, and then. That led me over to the county. I was at EAC Network for about 6 years. It was lovely. It was wonderful working for Family Treatment Court. But I, at that time, became a single mom and needed benefits. I needed
Right.
job security, different, my priorities shifted a bit, and that's how I entered county service.
Sure. And listen, I mean, that's some serious work, to be a rape crisis counselor. You've got to hear about a horrible situation, and you've got to be a voice of empathy and guidance at a time of deep emotional and physical, trauma.
Right.
This is not a job for everybody.
Right.
And there are a lot of jobs inside of Suffolk AME and government in general that, it's like you say, it's a calling.
Yeah, but all of that, and especially as a caseworker for Office of the Aging, it really provided me with the framework for this, for being on executive board of this labor union. I think that was probably the best route for me anyway, to make it up here.
Right. Yeah, it's, again, it very much is a calling, and I think you'll find with the folks that we work with on a daily basis, in the office and going out into the field and dealing with stuff, very unique lives, very unique passions, but that underlying altruism is very much there. And listen, it takes a type of patience and understanding to be able to hear, these issues every day, right? Not the same as some of your past experiences, but people are calling all the time and saying, "Listen, I can't get by. I can't work like this. I can't. We've got to sort through what's going on there, and sometimes it's personality conflicts at work, and we can help work through those things. And sometimes there are deeper issues." And sometimes people are going through things in their personal life that affect their professional life, and that's why having a union is so important, because you can have those moments in life and keep your job. Whereas when you're unrepresented, someone may not like your attitude that day, and that's that. And you don't know what the person's carrying.
Right.
We all go through stuff.
Right, that's it. And everyone deserves an advocate, whether they're in the right or in the wrong in the situation, just knowing that they have the union behind them, they have somebody that's going to show up and advocate and fight for them.
Yeah. And get them a second chance, right? If they did make a mistake, okay, let's figure out how we can correct it.
People
make sure
make
it
mistakes.
doesn't happen again.
Right.
Yeah, error is human. That is for sure. So, again, advocating on a larger scale now, there's something about being from a particular unit with, particular people that and whose jobs you understand and whatever, and now dealing with these more global problems sometimes, and dealing with folks that you're unfamiliar with, and the work that they do is unfamiliar to you. What kind of things have been a pleasant surprise for you, where you're able to jump in and help out and get something done, on a grander scale?
Yeah, one thing that's come up recently is it was in the news this week about the early intervention, the members working over in early intervention and the struggles they're facing because the state has switched over the system that they're using, and it's created a huge
bottleneck, right?
A bottleneck, yeah. There's a delay now in these families receiving their services for their children that are in a crucial time of development and need these services. So just being able to be in those rooms, my colleague he had already had something scheduled over there to go meet with Assemblywoman Jody Giglio. So we had that meeting with her over Zoom, and just, being in that room and seeing, wow, the Assemblywoman, she's taking time out of her day. She's listening to these members who are, they care so much. They just want to be able to do their jobs. So just being part of that, helping with that, adding to that conversation, that's one thing recently that's come up that I was like, oh man, this is important stuff that we're doing up here.
Yes. And, we'll find that we're in these important situations, having these important conversations. And by and large, these conversations aren't about the individual or the group of workers and how they're being impacted. It's about providing a service and saying, hey, listen, my identity and part of my work identity, at least, is helping other people. And I'm having a hard time helping other people.
Right.
How can you guys help us help these people?
Yeah, we need to fix this problem.
And knowing that we have a voice, right? Knowing that we were able to jump in, start getting certain conversations going. And already, Albany isn't in session yet. But to make some changes up there, conversations need to happen. And, last week I was having good conversations on that front, to talk about what are ways that we can look at solving this problem.
Right.
And it, you're right. It is very rewarding to hear back from folks on how they can do their job better, right?
Right. But yeah, so that was really my first experience of just seeing, this problem that arose in this one sector, and that's just one department in the whole county, right? But this department issue that this department was having, coming to their union leaders saying, "Hey, we have this problem. We don't know what to do. Please guide us. What can we do?" And then us, as a union, having that reach to our local elected, to maybe news outlets, and getting this on the radar of whose radar it needs to be on. It's incredible. And now these are the first steps into getting that problem fixed for them.
Sure. And listen, you say our local elected, but when we talk about on the state level, we won't just talk to those state folks that were elected in Suffolk County. We're going to talk to the chairs of the different committees that directly interface with this issue, because when we're up and lobbying in Albany, we aren't necessarily only concerned about the representatives in Suffolk County. Right. We are concerned about them, but not exclusively them, because maybe somebody upstate is the chair of the committee that can help fix this problem, and we've got to talk to them also.
Right.
So listen, I know you're still feeling new, and bad news that's going to be for like 4 years, right? There's so much to learn, there's so much to do, so many people to meet, whatever. But in all of that, is there anything you're looking forward to, right? Like, it's a very daunting future in a way, so much to do, so much to learn, so much to work on, whatever else. What's something you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean, the thing I've really been most looking forward to and really most enjoying is speaking to more members. Like I mentioned before, like the early intervention, that's just one sector of this bigger thing. I think people just want to be heard. They want to feel like somebody's hearing them, listening, and just taking calls from people in health services, or people over at DSS, or people over, at Bergen. Everyone, all these different departments and all these different titles have very specific needs that are specific to their job duties. And really my goal, at least for my first year up here, is to learn what that looks like for them, learn about their jobs, learn where they're coming from, what are their struggles, where do they need more support. That's really my biggest goal for the next year.
Yeah,
what I'm looking forward to.
That's lofty goal right there. So listen, in closing, just one last thing, and I don't get to do this all the time, but whenever I can, I like to do it. And that's to say, I've had a bunch of questions, things that maybe I was interested in. I pontificated a little bit also because I can't keep my mouth shut. But is there anything that we didn't get to today that you would like to just have people know?
I think what I want people to know about me, because as I am new and a lot of people don't know who I am or what I'm about, I am someone who truly will care about what you're telling me. I was a single mom for a long time. I have 2 daughters. They're my pride and joy. They test me every day. Anything after that is a cakewalk. But I really just want people to know that I'm here. If you reach out to me, I'll be reliable. I'll answer you, and I will do my absolute best to advocate for you.
It's well said. I think at the end of the day, despite whatever anybody does for work, they have a motivation on the personal level, their family, and their friends, and that whole internal network that motivates them. So my guest this morning, Kelly Shivers, a vice president up at AME, and thank you for joining and kind of going through. I know, maybe thrown a little bit to the lions today in that, you haven't had the experience of coming on the radio and talking about some of these things, but now you can say you have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I appreciate being here. Thank you so much.
So, and to our listeners, we'll speak to you next week.